the people who are harming themselves, the white people who are harming themselves in order to fit into um, the sort of hate that they've been taught are the ones that blow my mind. Like you show them statistics, you tell them stories, and they still refuse to believe it. But they are harming themselves. Like, racism hurts white people as much, not as much as it hurts black people, but it hurts white people, and they are okay with that as long as it hurts you more.
Exactly.
And it and I don't know, what to do with that. I have tried and tried to say, look, these statistics, this is the reality.
Yeah, but it's not
And
a logical issue, Carrie. It's not
no, it's
about
not.
logic,
It's
like
not
the
about logic.
issue, it's about their pain, their emotional pain. Like these people don't know they have the emotional intelligence, of a child.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's what's happening here. This is emotional and spiritual. And unfortunately, the emotional and spiritual contexts have been taken to be somehow unscientific or unrigorous or unacademic. And that
Yes.
is not at all the truth. And part of the reason that has happened is because that is where our solutions lie. What you'll start realizing the more you investigate white supremacy is like the entire world has been set up to make sure that a resistance cannot arise, which is
Mm-hmm.
exactly why we're experiencing what we're experiencing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's why logic and reason cannot root us out of this, is because um, it has to be, or at least it has to be a logic and reason of emotion, right? Hurt people hurt people. We know that. We know
Right.
that,
Right.
and these people are hurt. They've been hurt, regardless of whether, they're how nasty they are or whatever else. That's what's happened to them. And that's what's the foundation of their actions. So ultimately that has to be dealt with. There has to be a chance for enough people to transform, okay, to be given a chance to be stimulated to transform and then given the space to do so. That is what's been stolen away from most Americans.
Mm-hmm.
You had to find your oasis, your racial
Mm-hmm.
oasis during your life, to have that transformative experience where you were around people of different races, where you could experience your own racism, right? And
Yeah.
reflect upon it and change. Like
Right.
most people do not even get that chance, and that's
Yeah.
by design, And so ultimately, we need to fight back against it by going against the design. That's what my business is designed to do. It's not going to be a typical endeavor. It's mission oriented. The mission is the obliteration of the system of white supremacy. It's possible uh, in this technological digital age where we can connect hearts in a way that we've never been able to before, where hearts can be transformed at a level and at a in a way that they've never been before. And I've seen uh, present examples of this in other contexts. So I'm going to be tackling the race context and try to dismantle the system of white supremacy. And I appreciate you, Carrie, being a part of that and putting yourself out there. It's pretty
I,
cool.
yes, thank you. I'm a part of it. But when you said you're going to dismantle the systems of white supremacy, I was like, okay, Don Quixote, go for it.
Listen, I'm at least going to give people a blueprint for how to do it, right?
Yeah.
At the very
Yeah.
minimum,
I mean, we
I
need to
mean,
talk about it. That's really the only way we can start. But yeah, I get it.
exactly. That's the
I'm
beginning.
I'm
That's the
I'm with you
beginning.
all the way.
I'd like to
Yeah.
argue that it's the beginning and the end. Like if you once you start talking about it, there's really only one way it can go. Like if you're going to value truth, what we need to do is reveal people's values, and people need to reveal their own values. If you value truth, you will end up becoming an anti-racist. If you truly
Mm-hmm.
value it, that is what
Mm-hmm.
will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now, we just need a mass values investigation exercise. That's what we need,
Mm-hmm.
a national values investigation exercise where every individual looks within, self reflects, and decides this is who I am, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm willing to live for, this is what I'm willing to die for. And then allow people to solidify that. White supremacy has made people be murky on their values. That's part of the design, that's part of the mechanism. And so, you know, I try to get people to understand that there is a logic to this. There is a strategy to this. I'm not just out here having conversations for the sake of it. There is a literal logic and strategy behind the efforts that I'm creating, and it will work. There is a 100% probability that it works if it gets big enough. So
Yeah.
can I make it big enough? I don't know. Can someone? I'm certain. And so I'm just trying to be an example and do whatever I can to create space for these conversations. Many other people, like my good friend Sima Lieberman, the inclusionist, on here on Substack as well, is doing it. I'm meeting other people who have been doing it, and we're going to organize and we're going to get together and we're going to build something, a machine to fight white supremacy and to cleanse our toxic environment.
So when you talk about that, I think about news media, because that's what I was part of for a long time. And how even when the news media addresses the incredible racism that is going on right now, they do it within the bubble of where they live in the news media, right? And that bubble was created by white supremacy. So
Correct.
The whole idea of objectivity is, well, we're going to see the world the way white men see the world. And if you don't see the world the way white men see the world, then you're biased, right? There's journalism, and then there's specialized journalism, and that's the root. And that's environmental journalism, and that's,
Yeah, I would say bias, right, is like a euphemism or an illusion for you're our enemy.
Right.
You are our enemy, if you don't see the world that we do.
Right. And so what happens is people like you and me who are like, no, truth. And let's talk about values rather than just what's happening. Let's go past that. Let's go 1 or 2 steps past that. We get pushed out, or it's so uncomfortable that we finally leave. Right?
Yeah.
If you had probably worked for that law firm, you probably wouldn't have lasted long because you would have left. And so the voices that need to happen, the things that need to be heard by people, that values discussion that needs to be had, cannot be had in the media systems that we have set up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why it's not in my plans to utilize those systems whatsoever.
Right. That's why
well, there is a plan for me to, if I ever do get a chance to like sit across from a Scott Jennings or someone like that and call them evil to their face, I will indeed take that opportunity.
He's the guy on CNN, right? He's the guy that argues.
Oh yeah, it's that smug.
People. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. That guy is just evil incarnate and disturbing to watch. But yeah, so you're right. You're exactly right. We gotta create, and it's not just media, right? We gotta create systems across the gambit that are outside our current institutions. Our institutions, guys, we can't say they're failing anymore. They failed. They failed. Like we, at some point we need to accept, that like we lost this round, and we need to steel ourselves for round 2, that's what we need to do right now. And like, it's frustrating, but like, I'm also have a lot of hope, right? Because I feel like these people, they're incompetent. They're overplaying their hand. As long as we take what power is within our hands and utilize it, we can win. To me, that is very clear. Unfortunately, we have a lot of apathy, so much apathy, so much fear. And we got to get over that, guys. We got to push through that. We need people to be brave. We need people to find their courage and do what needs to be done. Like I wrote a post on Substack, Carrie, recently, like about Sandy Hook, and I thought after those kids got blown away, that people would keep their kids home from school. Like across the nation, there would be like that until legislation was passed, like school's out, like we're not doing this. And then kids just kept getting blown away over and over and over and over and over. And people are still sending their kids to school. And that's when that's when I knew. I was like, this is going to be an uphill battle. If people are willing to accept this, in our government inaction, then they're going to be willing to accept a lot of violence before we're able to get enough people to turn it around. And that was really what informed my decision. I mean, one of many things. I saw other expressions of this as well. COVID is another one, right? There's many. So I was like, it informed my decision to I was like, all right, peace out, y'all. When you're ready to fight, I'm here. I'm a fighter. I believe in the values that I've expressed through this live stream. I believe in those that mirror what's in the Constitution, Declaration of Independence. I believe in that stuff, and it's clear that the government does not, that many of the people in this country do not. And yeah, and even the people who do believe it, a lot of them are not ready to fight for it. So under those circumstances, I'm not sticking around because I know where I'm at on the chopping block.
Two answers to that. One is, they both start with a C, I'm realizing. One is COVID, in terms of parents pulling their children out and staying home, right? I was covering education during COVID, and parents were pissed that their children were home because they didn't want to spend all day with their children. And I get that, right? Like I remember when my children were little. I love my children. They're really great. We have a great relationship. They're twins. But when they were little, I met somebody who homeschooled, and I was like, oh no, if I homeschooled, somebody would die. I'm not sure if it would be them or me, but somebody would die, right? So I get that, but they didn't want to spend all day with their kids, and they had to go to work. They wanted their freedom, and they saw education as the babysitter, the school as the babysitter.
Yeah, I'm well
and
aware.
That also fits into the whole neoliberal thing, which I write a lot about, right? Like, we have been taught that we have to keep going on this treadmill and this treadmill and this treadmill. And then suddenly COVID stopped the treadmill, and suddenly we had our families to take care of, and we had to choose, which enlightened a lot of people, right? But we need to, not just white supremacy and racism do we need to deal with. We need to deal with the liberal idea, which is based in white supremacy, right? Which was a reaction to the gains of the 60s and the sort of like tragedies of the 70s that came about with Ronald Reagan. It's a whole other thing. I could go on and on about that. But the other part of it was the Constitution. And I'm going to disagree with you on that. I do agree with the ideals of the Constitution. But you remember, the Constitution was a compromise. The Constitution allowed America to become a country with half of the states owning other people. And I read Erwin Chemerinsky wrote a very short, very cool book about the fatal flaws of the Constitution, and I don't know that they are fixable. Like, there's a part of me that's like, we have to fail, and we have to reconstitute. And whether we reconstitute as 50 states or we reconstitute as a few different countries, I don't know. But the blueprint for how this country was formed, it was by men who decided that people's lives were worth being together as a country and having it be easier to have people working, have states working together. Yeah. And so
none of that is disagreement with me. Like, I am in 100% agreement with all of that. When I was talking about the Constitution, I meant exactly what you did. The ideals, right? Like, yeah,
I totally agree with that. But
of course, you're exactly right about the nature of the Constitution as a legal document and what its purpose was. Yeah, exactly right.
And the men in the room were like, okay, it's more important to have the 13 states together so that we could do commerce and we can agree on laws and things like that. And that's more important than making sure that all men really were treated equal, right?
Well, it didn't have to be, it
Um,
wasn't an either or proposition. They made it that way, right?
yeah, they
Which
made
is
it that way.
exactly right. So that's, well, that's why
I
we
mean,
have
there
to
were some people
reconstitute and
there
have
who were
to,
like, "No, we are not signing
right,
this,
right.
and unless slavery is abolished." Right? They
Right.
lost,
Yeah, they lost.
and that
And
was,
we
and that's
continue,
the
we
start.
continue
That
to
was the
lose.
start. So
But
I
yeah,
feel like there's a whole revolution that needs to take place before we get back on the right track. But
you're right. You're right. It's
okay.
going to be massive. It's going to be earth shattering. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the whole world order is shifting right now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think that, yeah, like we're not going to see the full impacts of what's happening right now. I think it's beyond anyone's really prognostication right now.
Mm-hmm. And I
You
think that
know,
you and I, even though you're 20 years younger than me, are not going to see the full impacts of what happens in our lifetimes.
I agree.
You
Yeah,
know,
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah. So, that's why I really encourage people, instead of thinking of those daunting lifetime time periods, to just turn inward, like, because ultimately one thing that we've lost in this time where we've been kind of a little bit passive and apathetic and unprepared for this moment in time, I think that's objectively true overall, like as a
Uh-huh.
country,
Uh-huh.
um, we need to regain our power. And that's what we need to do. We need to build our power back up. People who believe in goodness, people who believe in kindness, people who believe in communication, in community, in other people, in humanity, in human life, in our environment, and our relationship to it. Like people who have these values and these beliefs and stuff, we have forgotten that power does not equal violence. I think that that's
You
another
say, let's write
layer.
that down.
It's
That
true.
was great.
It's very unfortunate, but like it seems like we've been indoctrinated, a lot of us, into not understanding power outside of violence. And it's because we're in such a violent environment, and country. And violence is constantly pushed on us from birth, basically. Um, so yeah, it's a complication, that I've been thinking about a lot recently and working on, because I can see manifestations of that ignorance happening already, even though we're just at the very beginning stages. I can also see, as I wrote in my recent note, the cracks and fissures created in solidarity from white supremacy that will definitely, with certainty, in my opinion, stop any movement from stopping this fascist regime if it's not dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
We can no longer pretend like white supremacy is the sideshow. White supremacy is the main show. And at some point, we have to target it as if it's the case. We have never done that in the history of this country. We
Well,
have never done
we're both sitting in buildings, and these buildings had to have a base, right? They had to have a frame, and that base and that frame for this colonial world is white supremacy. And then there's been so many things built on top of it. I just sit and I think I'm on a house. I don't really think about how good is the concrete under here? Is it cracking? Um, but that is what we have to address, because it is the concrete under which we have built ourselves. And it's not just us, right? We were a colonial entity, and there had been a few hundred years of colonialism that happened before we became a country, and it's all of a piece. It's all
That's
of a
right.
piece.
Yeah. I mean, the more you dig and you learn about white supremacy, the more you find there is to learn and dig, like, and what I was saying earlier about, the depths of evil, like there's no bottom. When people say there's no bottom and the cruelty is the point, both of those things are very true, actually. There's an infinite well of evil that these people are pulling from. And we need to pull from an infinite well of good, but we've forgotten how to do that. Like,
Yes, and that's been on
like,
purpose too.
exactly. It's by design, like they've really got us on multiple dimensions. They've checkmated us in a lot of different ways, but
Mhm.
their power is waning. And that's why I'm so active now, because the reason they have to act right now is so aggressively is because it's the only possible way they can hold on to this system and this power. And so all we need to do is refine our power and take control. We can overpower these people. We actually can do it. I think just so many people, there's not enough people who have turned their attention to doing so,
Yes.
because everyone got comfortable. Everyone got complacent. Everyone kind of got entitled and expectant, and now here we are in a critical time in human history and the country's history.